everyone, and greetings. Now, you are probably wondering, why am I here? Or you probably don't. Let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Verill Iksan, and today in this YouTube video I wanted to complete the final exam for extensive reading class that lectured by Ma'am Dwi Rianti. Now, upon the three themes, I choose English language learning and teaching. Why? Because I'm an English student in education faculty. I'm going to explain you a little bit about the theme I choose. English language learning and teaching. What are learning and teaching exactly? Now, you have learned various of things since you were a little kid. You not only learn from school, but also your family, friends, stranger, or it could be anywhere. Now, what is the definition of the learning itself? According to Wikipedia, of course, learning is the process of acquiring new understanding, knowledge, behaviors, skills, values, attitude, and preference. Learning is essential to our existence, just like food nourishes our bodies. Information and continued learning nourishes our mind. Today, continuous learning forms a necessary part in acquiring critical thinking skills and discovering new ways of relating to people from different cultures. When you learn, you need to set goals.
What are your long-term goals?
Excellent question.
Learning goals allow you and your students to focus on what are they supposed to learning. When learning goals are explicit, they will guide your students' decision on where to focus effort and illuminate what they are to take from a given task. Moving on to teaching. What is teaching exactly? I had learned about teaching since I was in the second semester. I learned from one of my lecturer. His name is Sir Clary Sada. What I learned, teaching is an essential part of education. Its special function is to impart knowledge, develop understanding and skills. When we talk about teaching, we are dealing with different techniques, strategies, and approach that will facilitate learning. Teachers have to come up with varied instructional material and must use the right strategies in teaching their lessons, no matter what subject it is. Teaching is also a never-ending process. By the time individuals start going to school to the time they graduate and start working, they're involved in the teaching learning process. The ultimate goal of teaching is to promote learning. For the most part, learning takes place in many different circumstances and contexts. Although everyone is capable of learning, a student's desire to learn is vital to mastering new concepts, principles, and skills. I can include the link in the description. May I? The blog I will use for today is from ResearchGate. Some of you may be familiar with it and some of you probably don't. According to Charles Ward Author Service, ResearchGate is an academical social networking site designed to facilitate access to academic research and collaboration between researchers, and has quickly grown to become the biggest networking site of its kind with over with over 11 million users worldwide. In fact, the number of users has more than doubled in only 2 years, and the site is even being dubbed by the Facebook for scientists. Reasons why I choose the richest gate are: first, it is the right place. First, it is the right place to seek for answers from other researchers or scholars. There are literally tons of good research in it. You can choose whatever the material you needed. Second, I also use it as my personal knowledge base to document my understanding, knowledge, and experience on certain topics for future reference and validation. Now, let's jump to the review section. Okay, I want to let you all know that the blog I'm reviewing now consists of PDF that obviously I'm going to review, and the PDF have 5 pages in it, so we're going to review 5 of them. Let's see at the first page, audiolingual method. Audiolingual method is one of learning and teaching strategies, if I may say. There's an abstract in here, and the keyword, the first introduction. Let me read the introduction. According to academic research, linguists have demonstrated that there is not one single best method for everyone in all contexts. True, in my opinion, and that no one teaching method is inherently superior to the others. Also, it is not always possible or appropriate to apply the same methodology to all learners who have different objective, environment, and learning needs. That's also true. An experienced professional language teachers always adopt the principled eclecticist approach, deciding on the most suitable technique and applying the most appropriate methodology for that learner's specific objective, learning style, and context. 1.1 Best teaching method for learning English. Method of teaching English have developed rapidly, especially in the previous 40 years. As a language learner, training manager, or teacher, it is important to understand the various methods and techniques. It's also true, don't only mastering one technique, master another technique, why not? Especially for teachers, so that you are able to navigate the market, make educated choice, and boost your enjoyment of learning language. Each teaching method is based on particular vision of understanding the language or learning process, often using specific technique and materials used in a set sequence. Okay, that was good. Each method has a different focus or priority. So let's take a look at what this means in practical terms in the classroom. The more common method have a link to a separate page with more details and explanation of how they work, including by the most common method currently used, communicative language teaching. 1.2 Modern teaching method. As mentioned above, the modern language teacher doesn't follow one rigid method, but applies the principled eclecticism approach, fitting the method to learner, not vice versa. This means choosing the techniques and activities that are appropriate for each particular task, context, and learner, with a focus on motivation and helping learners become independent and inspired to learn more. The explanation of principled eclecticism also includes a useful 10-point guide for teacher and language student on the best teaching and learning techniques. Okay, moving on. Point 2, the audio-lingual teaching method. Within the outbreak of World War II, armies needed to become orally proficient in the language of their allies and enemies as quickly as possible. That's actually a good tactics. This teaching technique was initially called the army method, so before turning to audiolingual method, it was named as the army method, and was the first to be based on linguistic theory and behavior psychology. 2.1 Modern usage. The audiolingual method is still in use today, though normally as a part of individual lessons rather than as the foundation of the course. These types of lessons can be popular as they are relatively simple from the teacher's point of view, and the learners always know what to expect. Some of the most famous supporters of this method were Giorgio Schenker, who promoted guided self-learning with the Schenker method in Italy, and Robin Callan, who created the Callan method. 2.2 Audiolingual method. Based on Skinner behaviors and theory, it assumed that a human being can be trained using a system of reinforcement. Correct behavior receives positive feedback, while error receives negative feedback. This approach to learning is similar to the direct method in that the lesson takes place entirely in the target language. Emphasis is on acquisition of patterns in commonly everyday dialogue. I think that's enough. That's a very good point right there. 2.2.1 Definition and characteristic of audiolingual method. Okay, this is the most important part here. Let me read it. The audiolingual method, like the direct method, is also an oral approach. Oh, I get it. Why it's called an oral approach, because it came from mouth by what you say. However, it is very different in that rather than emphasizing vocabulary acquisition through exposure to its use in situation, the audiolingual method drills student. Okay, drills here is to improve your skills in spoken way. Just reminding students in the use of grammatical sentence patterns. They added that it was taught that the way to acquire the sentence pattern of the target. Let me stop right there. Let's move on to the next paragraph. In audiolingual activities are presented not only in drilling short patterns, but also in varieties of dialogues which students have to listen to, repeat, and memorize. Dialogue provide for students the structure and idea of how to use some type of patterns in some sort of situation. A very good explanation. Oh, they also include the timeline of this teaching method. Let's move on to the next page. Table 1, techniques and principles in language teaching. It's from Oxford University Press. Let's continue. 2.2.2. I think they mentioned the contra points on this list. Let me see. No, I think they do not separate it. We'll talk about it later. Oh, that's table here. Let's take a closer look. Audiolingual method characteristic. There's also a conclusion here. So I'm going to be real this time. Let's get back to the first page, shall we? Let's see the abstract. Of course, they have a very good example of abstract. The first one, the introduction, it is a good way to start to know what we're dealing with, the audiolingual method. 1.2 modern teaching methods. What I love in here, they mention that there is no method that fit all learners. Audiolingual teaching method. So they here explain how audiolingual method or the army method came from. 2.1 modern usage. How audiolingual method is still used today. Okay, so I'm going to run up all the review I said. So this is actually a good example for a journal, if I can say that. But I'm lacking something. It's like I've said this, the characteristic. There must be more than one characteristic of this audiolingual method. Could be 2, could be 5 or 10 or whatever. And it must have more goals than one. There's no way it's only have one goals. They only mention one goal in here. And I want to know more about the role of teacher and the student here. They doesn't really mention it in a very detailing way. And I want to know step to present the method. They doesn't include that information in this journal, and that's very bad. And pros and cons of this method. So that is for this YouTube video. I want to say sorry in advance if there any mistaken information came from my mouth, but I was really learning something from the audiolingual method, and it was fun. I hope you learned something from it. You know I did. And see you next time. Bye bye.